scratch and start digging and making meaningless gestures, perhaps growling or whatever, to deal with frustration or surprise or fear. And a great deal of laughter is induced by fear. I was working on a funny television series years ago. We were trying to put a show together that, as a basic principle, mentioned death in every episode, and that this ingredient would make any laughter deeper without the audiences realizing how we were inducing belly laughs. There's a superficial sort of laughter. Bob Hope, for example, wasn't really a humorist. He was a comedian with very thin stuff, never mentioning anything troubling. I used to laugh my head off at Laurel and Hardy. There's terrible tragedy there somehow. These men are too sweet to survive in this world and are in terrible danger all the time. They could be so easily killed. Even the simplest jokes are based on tiny twinges of fear, such as the question, "What's the white stuff in bird poop?" The auditor, as though called upon to recite in school, is momentarily afraid of saying something stupid. When the auditor hears the answer, which is, "That's bird poop too," he or she dispels the automatic fear with laughter. He or she hasn't been tested after all. Why do firemen wear red suspenders? And why did they bury George Washington on the side of a hill? And on and on. True enough, there are such things as laughless jokes, what Freud called gallows humor. There are real-life situations so hopeless that no relief is imaginable. While we were being bombed in Dresden, sitting in a cellar with our arms over our heads in case the ceiling fell, one soldier said, as though he were a duchess in a mansion on a cold and rainy night, "I wonder what the poor people are doing tonight." Nobody laughed, but we were still all glad he said it. At least we were still alive. He proved it. Chapter 2. Do you know what a twerp is? When I was in Short Ridge High School in Indianapolis 65 years ago, a twerp was a guy who stuck a set of false teeth up his butt and bit the buttons off the back seats of taxicabs. And a snarf was a guy who sniffed the seats of girls' bicycles. And I consider anybody a twerp who hasn't read the greatest American short story, which is Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce. It isn't remotely political. It's a flawless example of American genius, like Sophisticated Lady by Duke Ellington or The Franklin Stove. I consider anybody a twerp who hasn't read Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville. There can never be a better book than that one, on the strengths and vulnerabilities inherent in our form of government. Want a taste of that great book? He says, and he said it 169 years ago, that in no country other than ours has love of money taken a stronger hold on the affections of men. Okay? The French-Algerian writer Albert Camus, who won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1957, wrote, "There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide." So there's another barrel of laughs from literature. Camus died in an automobile accident. His dates? 1913 to 1960 A.D. Do you realize that all great literature, Moby Dick, Huckleberry Finn, A Farewell to Arms, The Scarlet Letter, The Red Badge of Courage, The Iliad and the Odyssey, Crime and Punishment, the Bible, and The Charge of the Light Brigade, are all about what a bummer it is to be a human being? Isn't it such a relief to have somebody say that? Evolution can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. What a mistake we are. We've mortally wounded this sweet, life-supporting planet, the only one in the whole Milky Way, with a century of transportation whoopee. Our government is conducting a war against drugs, is it? Let them go after petroleum. Talk about a destructive high. You put some of this stuff in your car and you can go 100 miles an hour, run over the neighbor's dog, and tear the atmosphere to smithereens. Hey, as long as we're stuck with being Homo sapiens, why mess around? Let's wreck the whole joint. Anybody got an atomic bomb? Who doesn't have an atomic bomb nowadays? But I have to say this in defense of humankind. In no matter what era in history, including the Garden of Eden, everybody just got here. And except for the Garden of Eden, there were already all these games going on that could make you act crazy, even if you weren't crazy to begin with. Some of the crazy-making games going on today are love and hate, liberalism and conservatism, automobiles and credit cards, golf, and girls' basketball. I'm one of America's Great Lakes people, for freshwater people, not an oceanic but a continental people. Whenever I swim in an ocean, I feel as though I'm swimming in chicken soup. Like me, many American socialists were freshwater people. Most Americans don't know what the socialists did during the first half of the past century with art, with eloquence, with organizing skills to elevate the self-respect, the dignity, and political acumen of American wage earners of our working class. That wage earners without social position or higher education or wealth are of inferior intellect is surely belied by the fact that two of the most splendid writers and speakers on the deepest subjects in American history were self-taught workmen. I speak, of course, of Carl Sandburg, the poet from Illinois, and Abraham Lincoln of Kentucky, then Indiana, and finally Illinois. Both, may I say, were continental freshwater people like me. Another freshwater person, and splendid speaker, was the Socialist Party candidate Eugene Victor Debs, a former locomotive fireman who had been born to a middle-class family in Terre Haute, Indiana. Hooray for our team! Socialism is no more an evil word than Christianity. Socialism no more prescribed Joseph Stalin and his secret police and shuttered churches than Christianity prescribed the Spanish Inquisition. Christianity and socialism alike, in fact, prescribe a society dedicated to the proposition that all men, women, and children are created equal and shall not starve. Adolf Hitler, incidentally, was a twofer. He named his party the National Socialists, the Nazis. Hitler's swastika wasn't a pagan symbol, as so many people believe. It was a working person's Christian cross, made of axes, of tools. About Stalin's shuttered churches and those in China today, such suppression of religion was supposedly justified by Karl Marx's statement that religion is the opium of the people. Marx said that back in 1844, when opium and opium derivatives were the only effective painkillers anyone could take. Marx himself had taken them. He was grateful for the temporary relief they'd given him. He was simply noticing, and surely not condemning, the fact that religion could also be comforting to those in economic or social distress. It was a casual truism, not a dictum.